She walked into the bank with nothing but confidence and a dream. But before she could even finish her sentence, the manager smirked, his eyes narrowing at the way she spoke. Her accent became his weapon, a reason to dismiss her, to treat her as less than. What he didn't know was that behind the voice he mocked stood a woman who held the power to change his world in a single move. Minutes later, he would learn the most expensive lesson of his life. Her name was Amara Johnson, a brilliant entrepreneur whose story had always been one of resilience. Born to immigrant parents, she grew up listening to her mother's soft lullabies in a language that was not English, and her father's determination to work 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. From an early age, she carried with her the weight of proving that an accent did not equal ignorance, and that hard work could break even the strongest walls of prejudice. Amara built her company from scratch. What started as a small idea in her living room had turned into a groundbreaking tech firm that caught the attention of investors across the country. Yet despite her success, she knew too well the feeling of walking into rooms where people doubted her because of how she looked or how she spoke. On this day, she wasn't just another customer walking into the bank. She was there to finalize the funding for a historic deal, one that would put her company on the global map. All she needed was a smooth transaction, a signature, and the manager's approval. But instead of respect, she was met with something else. A cold stare, a smirk, and the kind of condescension that told her exactly what he thought. He didn't see a CEO. He didn't see a leader. To him, she was just another woman with an accent. What he didn't know, what he was about to find out, was that the very voice he mocked would soon be remembered as the sound of power.
If you believe in justice, hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss a story that matters.
Amara slid her documents across the polished counter, her voice steady as she explained the purpose of her visit. The manager barely glanced at the papers. His eyes lingered longer on her face than on the details of the deal, and when she spoke, he leaned back in his chair with a smirk that grew wider each time her accent curved a word differently. "Do you even understand what these forms mean?" he asked slowly, as if speaking to a child. The words weren't loud, but the tone carried enough venom to cut through the air. Amara felt her chest tighten, not from confusion, but from the familiar sting of being underestimated. She calmly clarified the details again, but his dismissiveness only grew. He interrupted her mid-sentence, correcting her pronunciation instead of addressing the multimillion-dollar transaction sitting in front of him. Customers nearby began to glance over, some exchanging knowing looks, others trying to ignore the scene. Then came the laughter. Not a burst, but a low chuckle under his breath. "Maybe you should bring someone who can explain this properly," he said, sliding the papers back toward her with deliberate carelessness. The implication was clear. Someone who sounded different, someone who didn't carry the accent that he had decided disqualified her from competence. Every word was a reminder of the battles she had fought for years. In classrooms where teachers questioned her intelligence. In boardrooms where investors asked if there was someone else they could speak to. And now, here in a bank where her financial power should have spoken louder than any accent. But instead of shrinking, Amara held her ground. Her silence was not defeat. It was calculation. She knew something he didn't. The documents in her hands weren't requests for approval. They were confirmations. The deal had already been signed, the funds already secured. This wasn't a plea for validation. It was the bank's opportunity to be part of history or be left behind. The manager, still basking in his arrogance, had no idea that the very transaction he was mocking was worth more than his entire branch would handle in a year. His smirk, his laughter, his misplaced superiority. They were all setting him up for the moment he would never forget. Amara took a deep breath, her patience wearing thin. She leaned forward, not with anger, but with a quiet confidence that unnerved him. The room seemed to shift. Something was coming and he could sense it too, but by the time he realized it would already be too late. The manager pushed the documents aside with a final, dismissive wave, as though closing the door on her future. But Amara didn't flinch. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out a sleek black folder, its golden seal instantly catching the attention of those nearby. With calm precision, She placed it back on the desk, sliding it forward until it stopped just beneath his hand. His smirk faltered. Inside were official contracts, already signed and finalized, announcing a $50 million partnership deal with one of the largest global firms in the industry. Amara's company wasn't asking for validation. It was providing the bank with the opportunity of becoming the primary financial partner in the historic transaction. The manager's eyes darted across the pages, his face draining of color with each line he read. The same accent he had ridiculed was attached to documents worth more than his career could ever touch. The customers who had been pretending not to listen now leaned closer, sensing the shift in power. Amara's voice broke the silence, steady and deliberate. I came here today to give this branch the chance to handle the funding for my deal. But if this is how you treat your clients, perhaps I should take my business elsewhere. The weight of her words hit harder than any raised voice could have. Around them, the air grew thick, every second dragging out the humiliation written across his face. The man who moments earlier had reduced her to nothing more than her accent was now staring at proof that she held in her hands the kind of influence he would never touch. His arrogance collapsed into stammering apologies, but it was too late. The truth was out. The power he thought he had was never his to begin with, and Amara had just exposed it in front of everyone. Amara gathered her papers, her movements calm and controlled, while the bank manager's face burned with shame. The same people who had overheard his mocking tone now watched as his authority crumbled under the weight of her success. He had tried to define her by her accent, but what defined her was something far greater: her vision, her resilience, and the deal that could reshape an entire industry. She didn't need to raise her voice or humiliate him in return. Her presence, her achievement, and the reality of what she carried spoke louder than any insult ever could. With one quiet choice, to take her business to another bank, she reminded him that power is not granted by gatekeepers, but claimed by those who refuse to be diminished. Later that week, headlines announced the deal across major financial outlets. Amara Johnson, the woman dismissed in a bank for the way she spoke, had just closed one of the largest contracts of the year. The bank branch he managed wasn't even mentioned. He had been erased from the narrative, while she became the story the world celebrated. For Amara, it wasn't just about the money. It was about something deeper, the reminder that prejudice never defines the worth of a person, only the limits of those who hold it. She knew her accent carried the strength of her roots, the story of generations who fought for the chance she now lived, and she wore it proudly.